Take a little walk with me down memory lane for just a second. In 2019, I was working in downtown Durham, North Carolina at the newly opened WeWork co-working space. Now, I had heard of WeWork from my years in New York, but this was the first one that we had here in Durham, and it was exciting. My business was growing. I was networking with other entrepreneurs in the area every day. The vibes were immaculate. There was beer on tap, ping pong tables. I even did a 6-month storytelling series in collaboration with WeWork and Lululemon. It was incredible. But then just a few months later, I noticed a posting for the grand opening of their second location in downtown Durham as well, just less than a half a mile away. Now, here's the thing. If you don't know anything about Durham, it's maybe a city of a couple 100,000 people, like a mid-size city. It's not New York. It can't justify multiple WeWork locations, especially because my location wasn't even at full capacity. So I'm asking myself, how can they justify a second location? Then their infamous IPO came out, and I found out that the goal of this company was to elevate the world's consciousness. And I swear to you, I laughed out loud when I heard that, because I'm asking myself, how does this company expect to do that? Now, this was a company that positioned itself, it sold itself as a tech company, and they had a valuation of $47 billion at that time. But all they were doing was leasing and subleasing office space. They were a real estate company. How on earth could they elevate the world's consciousness? Then what happened? Their infamous IPO was a flop. Their enigmatic CEO was ousted from the company. They crashed from $47 billion valuation down to $7. And then the following year, they were the inspiration of the Apple TV television series We Crashed, starring Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway. Now, here's the thing. WeWork didn't fail because of lack of imagination. They had this giant, lofty, aspirational vision to elevate the world's consciousness. No, they failed because they lacked a clear and measurable mission of how they were going to get there. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where filmmaking, brand, and business all collide. My name is Bennett, a filmmaker and an author, and for over 2 decades, I've studied how stories actually work on the screen, inside organizations, and most importantly, out in the real world. So each episode, I host one of the world's greatest storytellers to help break down the art and science of storytelling as a system, not just a skill. That means how stories create connection, how they move people emotionally, and ultimately, how they drive action. So if you want to learn to tell stories that do more than just sound good, but they actually achieve something, then this, dear storyteller, is the show for you. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about mission. Back in episode 216, we talked about vision, which is to say the story of where you're going, right? That is the big idea of your television series, if we want to use that analogy. But mission is how you're going to get there. Or in other words, the plot of the story that you are telling. We're going to talk about what mission is and what it's not. I am not talking about a mission statement. I'm talking about the mission, the plot line of where you are trying to go with your company, the sequence of events that will get you to achieve the story that you are crafting, the future story that you want to see in the world. We're going to talk about how to build a mission into your brand's ecosystem that pushes that brand forward and how storytelling will bring that mission to life. We're going to look at case studies of what not to do with mission, like in the WeWork example, but we're also going to look at case studies of what to do, especially in a very cool collaboration from 2 big brands, Pixar and Airbnb, that shows how to incorporate mission into your storytelling as a system with your brand so that you can understand, are we moving forward to the story that we promised our people? So before we get going, let's recap. Vision is the story of where you are going. Mission is the story of how you will actually get there. So your vision might be to elevate the world's consciousness, but your mission is going to be, what are the actionable steps that we take on a daily, weekly, monthly, annually basis that are actually going to get us to the finish line? This is so important for your brand to understand, because mission is the arc between intention, what you say that you're going to do, what you hope to do, and action, actually proving that you can do it. Now, let's get into it. One myth I want to dispel from the very top is that this is not about a mission statement. Now, your company can have a mission statement if that helps you anchor yourself in this part of the story, but this is not what I am talking about. I am talking about viewing your path, your journey, what you're trying to achieve through the lens of the actionable steps that you have to take. Again, the plot, the sequence of events in your story. So you can use this tactic for, yes, your overall grand vision and the mission of how you're going to get there, which is what you generally see in a mission statement, but you can also use it for any of your tasks, for your sprints, for your epics, for your goals that you have for that year. How am I going to get there? That is the existential question that you are asking yourself when you craft a mission based on this storytelling system. How am I going to get there? How am I going to measure it? When you do this, it takes something like your vision, the future story you're trying to tell, and it breaks it down so that you understand, what am I doing today that gets me closer to that goal? The thing is, when you have this lofty vision alone, just vibes like WeWork, and you don't do that aspect of it, understanding how does what I do today contribute to that, that's where you have the drift. That's where you have the misalignment, the huge gap between that. How is me subleasing office space that I leased going to get me one step closer to elevating the world's consciousness? It doesn't make sense. And that's why eventually it crashed. And it's certainly not one or the other. It takes both. Let's take a moment, in all fairness, to look at what WeWork did incredibly well. Let's look at their vision. Both of the co-founders came from a communal-based upbringing. They were both raised in communities where everybody depended on one another, and they wanted to put that culturally into their business. That was clear, and I was a recipient of that. That was very intentional. They created a community that was absolutely incredible. The people that I were not rubbing elbows with, but just passing by, going to get coffee every day, you'd conjure up these conversations, and organically you would network and you would make connections, and it would lead to more work and more collaborations. That part was palpable. It was absolutely effective, which is why they grew so rapidly. But they didn't have the mission element. They didn't have the understanding of like, okay, but how are we going to make this successful in the long run? It was like a flash in the pan type of thing, which is why if you watch We Crash, you really see the behind the scenes of what happened. Is like people were putting money into it and they kept buying up all this space, but there were a lot of red flags, and those that were kind of wise and hip to it noticed that, because they were like, where are we going with this? How can you justify? I mean, they opened up a school, they opened up all these other like side businesses. There was absolutely no mission. And that is why they ultimately crashed, because you can't go on heart alone. Everything that we talk about here on the show, and honestly, everything that you accomplish out in the world, in my opinion, is a combination of the head and the heart, or the art and the science, however you want to break it down. You know, you got to lead with your heart. There has to be emotion, but then you have to have the information or the intellectual capacity and understanding to actually build the thing. It's visionaries and integrators. I mean, I could do this all day long. It takes both. Now, one of the fundamental elements of using storytelling as a system is that it is co-authored, the story. It is not dictated from the top down and everyone else just has to hear it, understand it, and subscribe to it. It is written with all of your stakeholders, internally and externally. Now, why that matters for this conversation is when you are crafting your mission, you have a whole team of people that it takes to accomplish the mission. Every single part of that. Think about being a restaurateur, a restaurant owner, right? You've got the chef, which is the creative visionary. You've got the line cooks. You've got the expediter as making things happen. You've got the dishwashers. You've got the servers, the busboys, the bartenders. Everybody that's part of that ecosystem is equally as important. And if there's one chink in the chain, if one link is broken, the whole chain falls apart. The restaurant is a great example. I'm from a filmmaking background and it works there as well. It probably works in your business too. If somebody is not holding up their end of the process, it creates a bottleneck, or it creates a gap or misalignment or a broken link in the chain. Either way, whatever analogy or metaphor you want to use, it creates a situation where you are less efficient and probably less effective at achieving that mission. So I say that to say everybody is a part of creating this part of your story, the mission part of your story of where we're going. Break it down. What are the steps? How are we going to get there? Who is needed? When do we expect to get there? How do we know if we are successful? How are we measuring this? These are the questions you need to be asking yourself. This is all operational. Okay, how does it happen? Think about the story. If you're writing a story, okay, I want to write a story about young romance. Okay, yeah, but what happens? What happens in Act 1? What happens in Act 2? What happens in Act 3? And if all of those things happen, does it fulfill the promise that we gave at the beginning of this of a young coming-of-age romance? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you have to understand all those little pieces, starting with the 3 acts, breaking it down into the larger segments, and breaking it down into the smaller scenes. Are they all getting us towards that promise? So this is why it's so important to include your salespeople in this conversation, to include your designers and your engineers and your UX, UI experts, and of course, leadership, even your financial people, of course. You have to understand if you have the runway to be able to do this, if you have the cash flow to be able to do this. All of these people need to be involved in creating and understanding, is this going to be effective by the steps that we have laid out? Furthermore, when you co-author it with other people, it is now massively more protected. They will fight to protect it and make sure everyone stays on task if we all understand where we are going. What is the path? What can we expect? What's our alternative plan if there are obstacles? This is the most important part of storytelling as a system, is cohesion, is all of us understanding what's the story we're telling, how are we going to get there, and how will we know if we've achieved our mission? Okay, so let's take a look at the opposite side of things. Let's take a look at an example of when crafting a mission was done very effectively. One of my favorite stories about this goes back to the early days of Airbnb, when they were trying to understand their 2 user types, guests and hosts, and they were trying to understand their journey, the user journey, the customer experience. Now, this is something that any brand, big or small, service providers or product sellers or just personal brands, like everybody has this part of the journey. You have someone you serve, your customers, your community, your audience, your clients, etc. And they have an experience. They have their own story. This is why including them in your mission is very important. But they have their own part of the story that you walk them through. Now, that might be, a 1-minute transaction if you're buying a toothbrush on Amazon, or that might be a 1-year coaching package that you have with a client, but they have their own journey too. So the more you understand their journey and the obstacles they may run across, the easier it's going to be for you to deliver your promise to them, because you understand what they are going through. This is why I will always keep saying storytelling is a collaboration. You have to listen just as much, if not more, than you tell. Listen more than you tell, okay? So understanding their journey is very, very crucial. Now, what Airbnb did these days, they were inspired by Walt Disney. Walt Disney, when they created Snow White, which was the first feature animated film back in the 1930s, they storyboarded out the whole story, the whole film, because people didn't believe that you could create a feature-length film in this manner, in the animated style. So Walt Disney broke down all the scenes. Now that seems like not like a big deal, right? Almost all filmmakers and storytellers use a storyboard. It's a very effective way at kind of building out the story visually. But back then, they didn't do that. This was used to show proof, to show an example of how they might get there for people that wanted to invest in that. But it made it very clear for them to see visually where the story was going, instead of just following text or just listening to Walt Disney talk about it. So when the founder of Airbnb was reading this, I think in a Walt Disney biography, he had a little light bulb go off. What if we storyboarded out the user journeys from our guests and our hosts? Because each one is customized, a customized experience. You have a different house, a different listing. There's a different traveler or guest with different needs and wants and desires. Everyone is different. So how do you systemize that? How do you scale that? How do you standardize that when every transaction is going to be different? Well, they went to some of the best storytellers and storyboard artists in the world, Pixar. And there's an episode, I forget which episode it was, of the Storytelling Lab, where we had one of these storyboard artists. His name was Nick Sung. This was back in like season 2, rather, a long time ago. We had Nick Sung on the podcast, who told us about this project, which was titled Project Snow White. And so this collaboration between Airbnb and Pixar was profound, because they hired these storyboard artists to go through and write out all the different potential storylines of both of their user types, guest and host, meaning all the things they could run into, all of the things that could go wrong. Also, all the things that would make their experience a 10-star experience. They fleshed out every potential storyline. What that allowed them to do was to see potential obstacles that could arise before they even happen and do what? Solve those problems before they even get there. That is such a visual storytelling-based example of how you can use this system to understand how you're going to get there. What exactly am I going to do if someone shows up and they can't get in the house? Well, we've already written that story out, so we know what to do. Beautiful, beautiful example. I'm not saying you have to storyboard out everything, but you can. But you absolutely should play out the story of potential cases or potential storylines of those that you serve and what could go wrong. If I'm going to give this speech, what's going to happen if nobody laughs at my joke? If I'm going to promise this result with my coaching package, what's going to happen if they don't quite understand and can't complete exercise 3? Are we dead in the water? No, that's not the experience that you want to do. Or if I'm WeWork, what's going to happen if we can't get people to fill in the office space at the rate that we're buying, right? They didn't do any of that. That is the crux of the issue. Look into this. Go back and revisit that episode from Nick Sung, and we can dive deeper into this. But now, if you go into Airbnb's headquarters, those storyboarded pictures are up front. If people are hired there, they have to learn that process at the very beginning of their journey with Airbnb. They have to understand how they view things. But here's the point. They turn their customer journey and their customer experience into a literal plot. And then they use that story to align all of their team members and influence and inform every decision they made after that. This is what you need to do with your brand too. This needs to serve as a narrative compass. Where are we going? What are the wow moments that we aim to deliver? What is the inciting incident for our customers? When does the story really start for them? What are the potential obstacles they will run into? Mission is not a line. It's not a slogan. It's not a statement. It is a set of rituals, habits, practices, and processes that will get you to the story that you are trying to tell. When you look at trying to establish a narrative operating system in your business, this is crucial to understand that this applies to all systems. Your hiring, your marketing, your product design, your sales, your support, all of it. It is woven through everything. Storytelling is the bridge between what you say and what you do. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. We want alignment. We want cohesion. We want a story that is co-authored by all of the stakeholders. That is how you build these relationships that are long-lasting. So remember, it's not vision versus mission. It's both. You need both. The vision is what inspires your people, but the mission is what activates and organizes them. That's what makes it actually happen. So ask yourself, if you're trying to do this work, is our mission clear? Is it measurable? Do our customers understand it? Can our team members repeat it? Are we all aligned in where we are going and how we're going to get there? Before we go, I want to urge you to do this work. Invite me into it. I will help you. Send it to me over a DM or an email. Show me. Write your mission out. And this could be your mission for this year, your mission for this month, or what you need to accomplish this week. But write out the story. Simply, we just need the bullet points of how you're going to get to the goal that you have established for yourself. Send it to me. We can workshop it together. I absolutely love this work. And if you want to dive deeper, please stay tuned for the upcoming release of the Chief Storytelling Officer, which is coming out August 26, 2026, and is available for pre-order now. This is what the whole book is about. This is what all the time I'm spending currently is about. Understanding how to implement storytelling as a system in your business, to co-author it with the people in your space in order to create early adopters, evangelists, brand advocates, deep relationships that stand the test of time. That is what I want you to do with your brand and business. Not a flash in the pan, not a lofty vision with no idea of how we're going to get there. Deep, meaningful work, aligning yourself with those that you seek to serve. Next time we're here together, just you and I, we will talk about brand, the big idea of brand through the lens of storytelling as a system. In the meantime, keep working on your stories, keep understanding who you serve and how, and keep tuning in to the Storytelling Lab. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.